Don't forget to check out and grab your copy of our 2 newly released books, Football: A Love Story and What Did Football Teach Me? These books feature over 100 stories from current and former coaches, players, executives, and entertainers from across the football landscape, describing what got them involved in the game, what they love about it, and what life lessons the game taught them. You can find your copy or order your copy from our website at footballgameplan.com/books. Before we get to the report, if you like our style of video and analysis, feel free to show support for Football Game Plan by dropping by our YouTube channel at youtube.com/footballgameplan and leaving a little something in the tip jar. Every little bit helps us as we continue to improve the quality of our videos and the coverage we enjoy bringing you guys each and every time we put out a project. Thank you again for your support. Tyler Boyd out of Pitt kicks off our flanker prospect rankings video, or Z wide receiver. He's a smooth route runner, elite level hands, probably the best hands I've seen in college football. He's position diverse. He can be inside. He can be used in the backfield. He can be used on the outside. His return game is an asset as well. He has great body control. Now, I don't think he's an explosive athlete. He has marginal suddenness, and he'll struggle to separate one-on-one as a pro, but overall he sacrifices for the football. His football IQ is off the charts, and another guy that had similar strengths and areas of improvements in this game coming out of college, Keenan Allen of the San Diego Chargers, who I believe Tyler Boyd is an identical match. Mike Thomas out of Ohio State at 6'3", 210 is my number 2 rated flanker prospect in this draft class. He's explosive after the catch. He has elite level burst and shows the ability to break tackles. He reminds me a lot, quite honestly, of Pierre Garçon, who plays for the Washington Redskins. Now, I do think he has okay hands. He's decent in that area. His short area routes are A+. I think he's just okay everywhere else. And I also believe he's better versus zone than man, and he also must get better versus press coverage. But the effort is definitely there. That's what you want to see as a coach. He's able to explode out of his breaks, which is how he's able to get open. And he's, again, very dangerous after the catch, which is why he's still graded out around that first, second round area for me. I really like BRALON Addison out of Oregon. Here's a guy that reminds me a lot of Doug Baldwin of the Seattle Seahawks. He graded out as a second-round prospect. His football IQ is tremendous. He has a really good feel for the game. He's versatile. He can play inside. He can play out, running back, quarterback, kickoff returner, and punt returner. He also has very good run-after-the-catch skills. Now, polish is all he needs. I believe his route running also has a little bit room for improvement, as well as nuance of the position. But the upside, he's a football player. You can play him day one in any different spot on the field, and he has the toughness to compete. I think he's going to be an outstanding pro. LEONTE out of Rutgers reminds me a lot of Brandon Cooks of the New Orleans Saints. He's explosive, he has very good hands, and also is very strong at the catch point. Now, he's stiff athletically, he's more straight line-ish. He also tends to tip off his routes because he really has to gear down to make a stop and cut, all of which ties into the fact that he has had nagging injuries while at Rutgers. Also that marginal agility, and I think he has questionable skills at beating press coverage. But again, he has great acceleration to the football. He's able to track it very well. He's also a gamer, so he will bring his A game each and every time he steps onto the football field. Again, good overall receiver, just a little bit stiff athletically, but definitely worthy of a second-round grade. Will Fuller out of Notre Dame has great acceleration out of his breaks on in-breaking routes. He's able to stack the defender well. We've seen this versus USC. We've also seen this versus Temple, amongst other squads. He's tremendous with the football in his hands, and I think he's excellent on the perimeter as a blocker. I think he does a great job. That's one underrated element of his game. Now, he tends to let the ball get inside to his chest more than you would like, which leads to some of the drops, and he's not as physical at the line of scrimmage versus bump press, which is why I think he's a better flanker as opposed to a split. I also believe he tips off his comeback routes because he really has to gear up to break down, to turn around. The hitch and curl routes, I think he rises up to break down as well. So again, that's why I think he tips off those comebacks, because he has that tendency to rise up to break down. But he reminds me a lot of Emmanuel Sanders. This is a speed demon. He's a game breaker. You definitely will want Will Fuller on your football team. Kenny LAWLER out of Cal is an early entry in this year's draft class. He had a very productive season for the Cal Bears. He gets really good releases off the line of scrimmage. He's able to high point and extend for the football, so he plays higher than his 6'3" frame. He's very good with the athleticism, which affords him the opportunity to have that great body control. He also has above average hands. Now, I think he's okay in the acceleration department, and he needs to get stronger in his routes and with contested catches. I feel as though at times he can be bumped off his route, rerouted, and also bumped away from a 50-50 ball, but I do liken his game to Marcus Wilson of the Chicago Bears. Caleb Jones out of Arizona reminds me a lot of Martavis Bryant of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a guy that plays with very good length, solid run after the catch skills. He catches well from multiple spots and shows the ability to track the football well, but I do believe he struggles with press coverage. His feet tend to get sloppy on his release, and despite his size, he gets big boyed on routes, which means he gets rerouted or gets bumped off them, and he has to run under control if he wants to be successful on a consistent basis, but solid enough skill set to where he warrants a 4th round grade. TAJAE Sharpe out of UMASS is a guy that's coming off a very productive career for the Minutemen. He's also coming off very productive weeks of practice at the East-West Shrine game and also the Senior Bowl. He's a 6'3" receiver that plays 6'3". He's able to extend. He has dependable hands. He sets up those curls, comebacks very well, and also shows subtle nuance in leaning in with those skinny posts and seam routes. Now, his routes overall, I think, need some work. He tends to have issues with versus press, and also has to work on his strength because, again, versus press, he has to get stronger. He gets rerouted off routes because he's not a big guy. He tends to get bumped off those routes and doesn't explode out of his breaks. But overall, solid 4th round, 5th round type of a prospect that reminds me a lot of Terrence Williams, who plays for the Dallas Cowboys. With a name like KOLBY, LISTENBEE, you have to be fast, you have to be explosive, and that's why I think he plays a lot like Devery Henderson, who used to play for the New Orleans Saints. He's your quintessential deep threat, in my opinion. He tracks the football extremely well. He has great burst and quickness off the line of scrimmage. He's dangerous after the catch, but he doesn't create as much separation as you would like. His short area pass game needs work, and he's more of a cradler as opposed to a snatcher. What I mean by that is he tends to let the ball get into his body more often than you would like to see it happen to a receiver. So at times you'll see the defender get there at the same time as the football, and instead of snatching it out of the air, he waits for it, and it ends up being an incomplete pass. But again, as a single type deep threat, a one-dimensional receiver, KOLBY LISTENBEE definitely has a role in the NFL. Jamal Jones out of Montana put me on notice week 1 versus North Dakota State. Had an outstanding game, and I followed his progress the rest of the season and went back and looked at some 2014 film as well. He has a great pair of hands. He smoothly is able to get in and out of his breaks, and his short area burst and quickness definitely gets him open, but he has to add strength. He tends to get big boyed off routes and tends to let the ball get into his chest instead of extending and high pointing it away from the defensive back. But he's fearless and has good run after the catch skills. I think he's definitely worthy of a 5th round grade and reminds me a lot of Marvin Jones, who's now a free agent, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals. Roger Lewis out of Bowling Green can definitely play the physical game. He has great acceleration into his routes and also has above average skills after the catch and has a short memory. He needs that short memory because he definitely has okay hands. I think he's very inconsistent in that area, and I think it's a combination of concentration drops and late with his hands and eyes. He needs to polish up his route running on curls, comebacks, and hitches. He has to be able to sink his hips. I think he tends to really gear down to try to turn around, and it causes the defensive back to know what he's about to run. But I love his competitiveness. I do think he has some big play capability and plays a lot like Robert Meacham. I'm a big fan of Danny Anthrop's game out of Purdue at 6 feet 181. I think he's a legit game breaker. I love his versatility. He reminds me a lot of Albert Wilson of the Kansas City Chiefs. You can move him around a formation. He can play X. He can play in a slot, but I think he's ideally suited to play the flanker, the Z position in the NFL. I love his versatility. I love what he can do in a short to intermediate passing game. Now, deeper down the field, he'll have to improve his route running. I think he tends to round off those routes and doesn't really explode out those breaks, but short area burst and short area passing game is where he excels, and I think he has a future at the NFL level. And rounding out my list for the top flankers in this year's draft class, Andrew Flory out of Fort Hays State. Here's a guy that I think plays a lot like Jeremy Davis of the New York Giants. I love what he brings to the table from an acceleration standpoint. He's able to pluck and snatch the football out of the air, and he's fearless going over the middle of the field. Now, he's not as shifty, so I don't think he can do a lot of damage inside on seam routes and things like that. It takes him a little bit longer to really pop out of those cuts, but going on the skinnies and your deeper routes down the field, he's bunny. If he can become a little bit quicker with his footwork and sharpen up his route running, he can definitely see the field as a 3rd or 4th option.